The sun had started to slip down as Anthony Vaccarello's models began to saunter out into the giant polished marble hall of Berlin's Neue Nationalgalerie to show his Saint Laurent Spring-Summer 2024 menswear collection. It's by Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. From 1968, the modernist master's final commission completed a year before his death, and a whole wall is glass, which meant the Bellini-coloured sky looked like a massive moving Rothko, roiling behind the stiletto-slender, pencil black slashes of Vaccarello's models. They were inappropriately attired, meaning Vaccarello opened this Saint Laurent show with a clutch of lace smokings, white-tied tuxedo looks in featherlight grain de poudre, traditional after-dark show clothes that, here, seemed perfectly in place. Not just because night was falling, but because this was Saint Laurent, and this was Berlin. The openers seemed homages to Berlin's honorary patron Saint Marlene Dietrich. One model, virulent auburn hair slicked back above an ivory coeur-croisé faille top, was a dead ringer for Bowie in his thin white Duke era, whose tail end expired in West Berlin. It's unsure if Vaccarello was consciously aiming for those references, or if they're just what comes through osmosis, through showing in that city and through working for Saint Laurent. After all, Yves' 60s tuxedos were created, in part, in homage to Dietrich's masked drag of the 30s. Annoyingly, he showed his first tuxedo in 1966, beating Mies van der Rohe's museum by a couple of years. Would have been a satisfying bit of synergy, that. She has sex but no positive gender, wrote the critic Kenneth Tynan of Dietrich, and in the 30s Dietrich pushed the boundaries beyond. She was threatened with arrest and expulsion from the city of Paris for wearing men's clothes. A Saint Laurent le smoking, even in the 60s, could still raise hackles. One wound up getting the socialite Nan Kempner turned away from a fancy Manhattan restaurant as inappropriately dressed. She dropped her trousers and walked in wearing just the jacket which, bizarrely, was deemed more acceptable. These days, the blurring of genders is totally complete. To play with the codes of femininity and masculinity, said Vaccarello. I don't know the limit between. He was backstage before this show, eyes trained on the shoulders of his model lineup. And, we call this menswear, and it was worn by men, but really anything goes. Those shoulders were either squared off, linebacker wide, or fragile and sloping, deltoids exposed by blouses and bowed transparent chiffon, seductive cutaways and the kind of shrub off fichu necklines usually reserved for slithering evening dresses. More couture, more refined, more delicate, he said. Vaccarello was outright borrowing from his Saint Laurent women. Look 4, for instance, was a dead ringer of a look from his stellar February show. Squared off pinstriped shoulder, slithery deep cut vest, red pocket square and all. He said that, although that woman was deeply Parisian, she was 2 steps from being in Berlin. She reminded you of a film from Fassbinder. So she became a he, and wound up marauding around a massive Mies van der Rohe mausoleum. But, hold up, hadn't that woman already borrowed her look from the Saint Laurent man, via Monsieur Saint Laurent himself, who borrowed his shoulder from menswear, to paradoxically assert femininity through masculinity? And Vaccarello's men looked empowered and sensual dressed in silks and chiffons, while, apparently, now women are buying the men's looks too. So it was a great, glorious sloppy mass of gender fluidity all about this show, all the more satisfying, because it's so unintentional, so unself-conscious, and so au naturel.